Yeah, so this happened this weekend. It hurts like hell. Hey guys, what is going on? Jake Felzine here, trying to keep the peppy spirits up as I'm in a lot of pain right now on this side of my body, and yeah, it just hurts. We're gonna talk about it today because I had like a whole video planned, woke up early on Saturday to try and shoot this, and then basically went out and did this, which I'll explain, of course, here in a second. But anyway, I'm all right. We're all good. Kind of had to go to urgent care to get everything checked out, but we're good. But it definitely torched my weekend, and I definitely didn't get much for that shoot. I had kind of a cool little intro, which I think I'll play at the end, and I kind of want to talk about that because it was kind of fun. But yeah, pretty much right before sunrise, before anything that I wanted to do got done, I crashed on my OneWheel. I had this whole video planned out, this whole topic that I wanted to talk about. I think we'll touch on it briefly today, but mostly I just want to give you guys an update. I'm kind of trying to recover from losing most of the skin on my elbow and a pretty gracious amount on the rest of the left side of my body. So that's kind of why this weekend there wasn't a video and nothing was consistent and blah, 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 on top of all the other stuff, trying to get back in the mojo, whatever. But anyway, so how did I do this? Well, so I woke up for sunrise, was ready to go shoot an epic day. Life was good. I'm gonna just rest this arm here because it hurts to move it too much. Went out for sunrise, and I was a little bit late. I had to put Ozzy in the crate, and I was kind of running behind because I kind of was hanging out with him, lost track of time, and was like, oh my gosh, I gotta get out, gotta get out. Tried to wrangle all my gear as quick as possible, and then just booked it out the door, grabbed the OneWheel, and was basically going top speed down the road the whole way to the spot that I wanted to go to. And then I did kind of something super stupid that I definitely knew better than to do, but did it anyway, and that was basically at top speed, try to find if there was like any more speed that I could get from it. And if you guys haven't ridden a OneWheel before, there's just, the technology is super cool. Like, this totally is not, I'm definitely not done riding my OneWheel. I love that thing. But the way that it works is it really keeps your balance. I mean, it's only one wheel in the middle, so it looks like it'd be really tippy and scary. But once you get going, the way that the motors are worked and the gyroscope or whatever and the torque, I have no idea the actual science behind it, but it's able to actually kind of keep you balanced depending on the speed at which you are going, and it works really well. Well, I think once you get to that top max speed and it's keeping you level, if you try to lean into it more, I just don't think there's any more power for it to like kick you back up to keep you level. And so as I leaned, basically trying to get more speed, and I knew I was going so fast, and I knew I was basically at top speed. I kept leaning, and then like kind of in slow motion realized like, oh no, it's not catching me. I'm leaning forward, and kind of had just a split second to think through, what am I gonna do here? In hindsight, I probably should have tried to just lean back, but I was, tipping forward so fast, I really didn't have time to kind of catch myself. I was like, am I gonna jump off? Am I gonna try to run? Which I'm glad that I didn't do that, because I probably would have, like, I don't know, broken my face. Thankfully, I was wearing my total face helmet you guys saw in the last video, which I always wear when I OneWheel because it goes so fast. Anyway, I decided, the best thing I can do is just tuck and roll and hope for the best. And I think ultimately I got the best outcome, even though I basically, the doctor told me, had not enough skin to do stitches on my elbow. So it's just like a pressure wound. But anyway, kind of tucked and just slid across like the gravelly, like with all of the rocks in it. I can't remember what it's called, like chip sealed road. So basically just ground beefed the crap out of my elbow. I mean, it seriously looked like it was so gross. It was one of the grossest things I've ever seen. And I'm not usually super queasy with that stuff. And I was kind of looking at it going, oh, but anyway, so I hit the ground, whole left side got really scraped, but my elbow just took the brunt of it. I think my head was totally fine, maybe minor scratches on the helmet, kind of got a little bit of whiplash in my neck, but this just was really bad. Get up, kind of assess the situation, didn't think that my arm was broken, felt like I could ride home and just try not to bleed as much as possible as I'm like gushing blood everywhere. Made it home, showered, tried to clean it as best as I could, and then kind of showed it to Car, who was still sleeping because it was super early on a Saturday. And she was just like, I think we should call my mom and we should see if like we should go get it checked out. And anyway, we went into urgent care at that point to get x-rays, make sure nothing was broken, make sure it was thoroughly cleaned. They wanted to make sure there was no gravel in it, and then ultimately check if I needed stitches. And that's where she told me, yeah, there's not really enough skin left to stitch what I would want to stitch together, and then it would be really prone to infection. So basically, like, it's just a it's just like a pressure wrapping to try to keep it moist and contained so that the skin can essentially build itself back. It's super gross. I have a really gnarly picture that I want to show in this video, but I'm pretty sure I would like guaranteed get censored. So I don't know. And I debated posting on Instagram, but it really looked like hamburger was just on my arm right here. It was bad. So anyway, that is what happened Saturday. Actually, I have some other proof that I want to show you guys. So along with like ripping holes in all of my clothes that I was wearing, I don't know if it's like kind of hard to see or if it'll focus on it. Yeah, there we go. So this was my shoe that took the brunt of it, and you can see that that got completely munched up. And then this was my brand new backpack. Let's see if it'll focus on this, which got completely munched right here. I mean, you can just see all of the ripping. That got super chewed up. Really mad because this was like my brand new backpack that Carly had bought me for my birthday. And then the real kicker, and probably the true hero of the story, was my water bottle. Let's see. Oh, but my exposure is terrible. So if you can kind of see, it's a little bit hard to tell, but all of that scratching on the surface of this thing, it's a little hard to tell with how the exposure looks, but you can see, yeah, I mean, it got pretty munched. And this is my metal hydro flask, so you can, you know, only imagine what my elbow looks like, which is just skin. So anyway, you know, that was a fun start to the weekend, and then basically went to the hospital, got all wrapped up, and kind of sat on the couch in pain the rest of the weekend trying to nurse this baby back to health. It is Monday today, and it's feeling quite a bit better, but still hurts pretty bad. But anyway, what was I actually planning on? I'm gonna rest this down again, this hurts. But anyway, what was I actually planning on talking about? Guys, I wanted to make a whole video to talk to you about one of my, I don't know if I want to call it like one of my biggest or most expensive mistakes, but ultimately, as you guys know, I sold the GH5s. An amazing camera by Panasonic, super great if you want to get into filmmaking. I sold that camera to buy the camera back there that no longer has a light. Let's plug that in. That light is fixed. We're having technical difficulties both on my body and all of my gear. But anyway, as you can see back here, this is my Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K. By far my favorite camera that I have ever bought, hands down. I love that camera so much. I love shooting with that camera. I don't love filming myself with that camera, which is kind of what we're gonna talk about, just because it really truly is a cinema camera. And when you're behind it, it's amazing to use, but when you're trying to do YouTube, it can kind of be a little bit of a gotcha point. So as you guys know, I bought this camera with the money that I sold from my GH5s, but then ultimately a couple weeks ago, I actually bought the GH5s back, which is really expensive and kind of stupid that I basically sold it and then bought it back because I lost money in that transactional process. And I kind of wanted to talk through why I bought it back and why maybe I shouldn't have bought it back, and maybe I should have. I don't know. I want to talk through you guys kind of what happened, what my decision was, and then ultimately maybe kind of leave you guys with something to take away from my experience. Because again, I think as a complete camera junkie nerd, someone who just loves everything to do with filmmaking, it's pretty easy for me to justify buying gear. You know, a lot of my money that I make from my other job as a programmer is kind of my fun money that, you know, I mean, obviously I try to save as much as I can, but then have kind of a fun fund that a lot of the time, most of it gets dumped back into this because, well, I just love doing this so much. But everyone's circumstance is different, everyone's situation is different. And I just kind of want to talk through that today because I also want to be a word of encouragement and say, just because there's people out there like me who love this so much that they're willing to spend, you know, a lot of their free money on a lot of different avenues of buying cameras and new toys and talking about them and all the different technology that they have, you really don't need to do that, which is what I want to leave you guys with. But let's talk through why I bought the GH5s back and why I also kept the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema 4K, because I love that Blackmagic and I love the GH5s. And I just want to talk through why I ultimately felt like I needed both of them. So guys, first things first, the Blackmagic, again, like I said, is an amazing cinema camera to be behind the camera. I love shooting it, and it is a movie camera. It can be a good YouTube camera, but it really is just, it needs so many attachments. It needs a screen so that you can see yourself. The autofocus is a touch to focus system, so it doesn't have any continuous autofocus. And even then, the focus, if you use Micro Four Thirds glass, kind of sucks. There's just a lot of things that really slow down your workflow if you're doing YouTube. That being said, if you're filming like a short film or an indie movie, run and gun, the size, even with attachments, the size is still pretty small. It's kind of a filmmaker's dream. The menu system is great. All of the buttons are in perfect places. If you're behind the camera and you are the cinematographer or the director or whatever, and you're doing like an independent doc, which is what I'm planning to do in, like 4 or 5 months, I truly believe this is one of the best bangs for your buck as far as usability, size, and like quality of image, because it looks so good and it's so easy to use. So then we progress, well, where does the GH5s fit in? And again, I think this could be a phenomenal documentary camera. Now that I have both, I want to talk through with you guys. Some of you have asked, well, what's the difference, Jake? Why is the image so much better on the Blackmagic? I want to show that to you guys. I really want to explain, why one is better than the other. I think we'll get to that for sure. Got to heal up and then we'll go on to more videos. Ultimately, I just felt that the GH5s was a super high quality YouTube camera. It's got autofocus. It's not great. It's Panasonic autofocus, but it has it. It has a flip screen so I can see myself, which is so nice on YouTube. Everyone often tries to undermine flip screens because they just don't think that they need them. But I promise, for any of you who haven't tried them, flip screens are amazing for YouTube. It makes such a difference. It's always easy to film stuff no matter where you're putting the camera. And I just love that about Panasonic cameras, is they pretty much always, actually, do they even make a camera that doesn't have a flip screen? I don't think so. And then of course you've got Vlog on this camera, which produces a really nice flat image, looks really good. I'm a big fan of the image coming out of this camera. And again, it's not quite, in my opinion, as good as the Blackmagic. Depending on, what you're doing, how you're shooting, the glass that you're using, this camera still looks phenomenal. In my humble, somewhat subjective opinion, I think the Blackmagic's colors and all of that stuff are just more cinematic. I don't know. It's a nebulous thing, but I personally believe that the Blackmagic is a better camera image-wise. I'll talk you guys through why that is. That being said, GH5s also produces some really good looking stuff, and it kind of just comes down to what do you want to do with it. So long story short, because this video is dragging on, because of course I never know how to shut up, the reason I bought this camera back, guys, is for YouTube, behind the scenes type stuff, and as a B camera for the documentary, I believe that the Blackmagic needs this GH5s as a complement. I love doing this. I love buying cameras, so for me it's easy to justify this amazing tool to go alongside the Blackmagic and be a great camera for me for YouTube and vlogging and behind the scenes. Like, this camera is very high quality and very small and very compact. Great battery life, flip screen, amazing preamps for running audio, Micro Four Thirds mount so you can get small lenses on there. I love this camera, and I just kind of wish I almost hadn't sold it in the first place. That being said, this camera is by far probably one of my favorite cameras that I've ever owned. I love this thing. It's a beast. It looks so good, and I'm so glad that I bought it. I think if, gun to my head, I had to pick one, it would kind of depend on what I wanted to do. But that being said, like, filmmaking is my personal passion and dream. So I'd probably go with the Blackmagic, because that's going to be like the ultimate filmmaking tool. But if I was like wanting to be a YouTuber, I might go for the GH5s. I don't know. It's kind of a toss-up, and it depends on what you're doing. But that leads me to my final point, which again, it's taking me forever to get there. I think, guys, that no matter what camera you have, no matter what position you're in filmmaking, whether it's just a hobby for you and you want to go get your, travels so that you have awesome memories, you want to get your friends, or maybe you are someone who really wants to look into doing this for like a career. No matter where you're at in your filmmaking stages, you probably have a camera that is good enough to do whatever it is you want to do. I love this camera. I love this camera. I love all of the cameras that I own, all the way down to my GoPro. And there's so many like assets and skills that you can improve in filmmaking that really don't necessarily depend on the specs in these things right here. Even if you're just shooting GoPro, even if you're just shooting with like a photography centric camera, whatever the case may be, things like lighting, composition, your audio, the way that you edit, the way that you shoot, your style, your flow, your pacing, all of these things ultimately is what's going to make you a better filmmaker. In some ways, I feel kind of lame that I bought this camera back, because it's like, well, yeah, I mean, do you really need it? No, of course not. You probably have a good enough camera. I mean, again, the Blackmagic is an amazing camera, and I still have my GoPro and like my G9 and, all these other cameras that I've accrued over the past couple of years. You probably don't need to upgrade. And it's just that simple. Work on those skills. And I think as you progress and as you make money and as you decide, how you want to allocate that money, making decisions like the one I made where like, yes, I really want this camera back. It's going to fit into my workflow great, whether that's for B camera doc shooting or A camera YouTube shooting. This camera is just hard to beat, and it makes a lot of sense. But I think you'll find yourselves in similar situations where things will come up and you'll go, yeah, it makes sense to justify buying that lens or that gimbal or that camera or whatever you need to do your next project. Or in the great words of Jake Felzine, maybe you're constrained and you've got to be creative, and you might actually come up with something that's even better than just buying something else, and everyone's going to be envious and go, holy cow, how did he get that shot? And then you're like showing some crazy new technique that you figured out because you were limited by the technology that you had, but you wanted to make it epic. And that, again, guys, is what this channel is all about. Of course, I love buying stuff, but at the end of the day, creativity comes from constraint. No matter where you are at in your filmmaking career, you will be constrained. No matter how much money you have, there's always going to be constraints, and how you overcome them is your skills in those things that I talked about. Okay, it looks like this video is going to be incredibly long. I'm going to get out of here, guys. Real quick, I'm going to leave you with a little bit of B-roll from that Saturday morning that I shot. Again, because I knew that I crashed, I actually edited over this kind of ominous little track underneath. Let's roll that now, just so that I have something from Saturday. I didn't get any of my crash on film, unfortunately. Potato Jet one-upped me on that one. But anyway, let's roll that. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, feel free to leave me a like and consider subscribing and being a part of the Jake Felzine community. Apologies over the next couple of weeks as healing and all of that takes place. I'm going to try to be as consistent as I can, but obviously this has definitely been a real wrench in the old workflow and makes it tough to film when your arm is kind of in a pretty painful and immobile state. But anyway, I'm getting out of here. Peace out. You guys have a good one, and I will see you in the next one.